What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Now we're pretty much at the home stretch for E3, right? I mean, this is it. This is the last day. So I've been finding a lot of news that I'm going to try to put into Newswave today, but I might have to go a little faster than usual to get it done in the set amount of time. So let's just get started real quick. And guys, the first bit of news today comes from the Xbox One X, which is the newest platform from Microsoft that, if you have not been following along, is supposed to be the true 4K machine. That's why it took an extra year to get out after the PS4 Pro did. It's more expensive because it's more powerful, which according to Microsoft means that you get a true 4K resolution experience, right? Well, so during E3, news came out during the Assassin's Creed Origins keynote when they did 30 minutes of gameplay. They talked about it heavily. They were using the Xbox One X apparently, which they might have even been used in a PC, but according to them, they were using Xbox One X. It also uses a dynamic resolution using the same checkerboard technique that the PS4 Pro uses, which is weird because it's supposed to be a true 4K machine. That's why we're paying extra money and waiting an extra year. According to them, though, because the Xbox One X is more powerful, it will stay at that true 4K resolution more consistently than the PS4 Pro will. But at that point, why? What happened here? Why did we wait an extra year and we're paying an extra $100? I understand it'll be at 4K more than the PS4 Pro will technically, but they both are doing the same thing. They're both using checkerboard patterns and putting out a checkerboarded 4K image most times, right? Maybe not most times, but there are times where it's doing that. It's not hitting its true 4K amount. And what the problem here is, what's the difference then? I mean, isn't that the whole point of this? We were waiting for a more powerful console because we didn't want compromises. That's why you're buying the Xbox One X. You want an uncompromised experience. And what's really weird is I feel like Phil Spencer should have known this was happening because he was even spotted on camera saying something like this. This is a true 4K console. If you just look at the specs of what this box is, it's in a different league than any other console that's out there. And to a degree, yes, it has better specs, but if they're both checkerboarding, they're both playing the same game, and you're getting a relatively clean 4K image, even if it is using an upscaling technique, what's the difference? What makes the Xbox One X actually better than the PS4 Pro? That's what the problem is now, because as more games come out and they use checkerboarding, it seems like Microsoft should have just made a system similar to the PS4 Pro and had it out this whole past year, right? They could have even still called it the Xbox One X and used relatively the same specs that the PS4 Pro used with the checkerboarding technique. It seems like a bad decision at this point if that's what they're going to do. Now, I'm sure there will be games where it's true 4K across the board, but do we really think that Anthem is going to be true 4K on the Xbox One X at this point if Assassin's Creed can't be? And now we have Destiny devs saying that the Jaguar CPU seems to be a bottleneck for them. It will stick at 30 frames because of that. So, great. I don't know, this Xbox One X situation just seems so weird at face value now that we're getting more information about how it's not going to technically be a true 4K machine. And you know, while we're on the topic of Xbox One and PS4, let's talk about something really cool that technically didn't come out of E3 this week. Another YouTuber by the name of Eddie Zarek did an interesting project. Usually he works on laptops in the sense that he will make a PS4 laptop or an Xbox One laptop, and people buy them and he sells them to them. In this case, though, he decided to kind of maybe test his skills a little bit or do a fun little project at home. He says he's not trying to sell these. There's just something to do to see if he could do it. And that is to put an Xbox One and a PS4 into one box, into one system. And you can check out the full video, it's in the description below, but this is really cool. So he has two different systems in there, and it will light up depending on which one you use. You have to shut one down, you turn the other on, but it travels in one box. It uses one HDMI cable, one power cord. And it's probably easier now to do that because before, with the old Xbox One, you had to use a power brick, which would have made that substantially harder, I believe, to do. But in this case, you can plug everything in and you just kind of switch back and forth. Has a fan that cools both basically through its heatsink. And that is a very cool idea. It's always fun to see people do little projects like these. And again, if you want to check it out, I'll have the link in the description below. He also sells the Xbox One and PS4 laptops. If you want to kind of get something made up that maybe travels a little better, he does them custom. Oh, and real quick, while we're on the topic of E3, we do now have our dates for E3 2018. That's June 12th to June 14th. What they do is when you're leaving E3, like the last day or two, they usually put a poster, a big board up that tells you when next year's is, and we now know. So that's great. I'm going to do everything in my power to go next year because I'm pretty confident Metroid Prime 4 will be playable in some fashion. We'll definitely see more of it, and I'm hoping that'll be their big game because they had Mario Odyssey this year. I'm hoping next year their big game is Metroid Prime, much like Mario Odyssey was showcased here. Maybe we'll get that really cool Metroid Prime like setup and all this stuff. That is my hope. Otherwise, maybe it's Pokemon, the next Pokemon game. I don't know. It's hard to say, but I have a feeling we're going to get one of those two are going to be like the big Nintendo game, and I'll be there for it. The other thing that's really cool about E3 week is usually you can kind of corner the different heads of the companies and ask them a bunch of questions you wouldn't be able to otherwise, because well, now's the time. They're doing their rounds for interviews and everything. Otherwise, maybe you have to send them an email and hope they'll answer back with something more than we have nothing to comment on at this time. And in this case, Kotaku managed to corner Reggie, or at least have some sit-down time with him, and they asked him some questions about the voice chat app and the voice chat setup, because that is kind of what's on everyone's minds with this Switch, is the way they want you to talk on it. And he had a few very interesting things to say about this. So the first thing I asked him is about this phone app that we'll have to use, asking him if that's really how it's going to be and why they think that is the best way for us to communicate. And he says, we actually think that the phone is going to deliver a better, more robust execution. In terms of the APIs that we can build into an app, the fact that phones are ubiquitous, the fact that it allows us to do much more rapid improvements and updates to the service. That's why we think a phone execution, and specifically a mobile app execution, is going to be better for the consumer. From there, the person interviewing them from Kotaku says, yeah, but have you seen this setup from Ori, where you have to plug all this stuff in? There's wires like everywhere. It's like a spider web going on. And Reggie fired back with something kind of interesting. He says, so let's be clear, what you've seen is the execution by one particular supplier. That is not going to be the only solution. That is good news to an extent. What does he mean exactly? What other executions could they have? My big hope is that they just allow Bluetooth straight up. Like that's it. Everything connects Bluetooth because our phone has Bluetooth, the Switch has Bluetooth, and you just get a Bluetooth earpiece of some kind, whether it's bought through first-party developers, or I should say manufacturers. Maybe Ori makes one, maybe they have someone else, maybe Turtle Beach steps in and makes something, I don't know. But if we have that, or maybe you can just buy your own piece from like to use for your cell phone, it all syncs up, that is probably the best case scenario at this point, because following that, the interviewer asks him, are you going to have to use the phone? And he says, it's going to require a phone, it's going to require a mobile device, and be delivered by an app. So there you have it. It looks like we probably will not have any way to communicate, no matter what, through the tablet itself with voice, according to Reggie anyway. Now, does that change in the future? It's possible. They seem very stuck on this mobile app, which is intriguing me more and more, because that means there's something that we don't see yet that they see. Now, that could also mean that Nintendo is just being very stubborn and sticking to this thing even after the mass backlash that we've seen. But sometimes, to be inventive, you have to sometimes go against the grain. And I will at least see the app before I say anything critical about it. But when it does come out, I will critique it much like everyone else will, and I will see exactly how practical this whole thing is, because we've even seen these weird mock-ups now with Nyko adding like a full setup where you hold your phone above the Joy-Con with a grip, and that doesn't really look like something I want personally. But you know what? I'm gonna wait and see what this app looks like, and then, well, then we'll see. Next up, we have IGN giving out their annual E3 show game of the year, pretty much. Basically, the best game they think is at the show. And surprise, surprise, it goes to what I would pick as well, and that's Mario Odyssey. Mario Odyssey, it looks so unique. It's crazy that Nintendo keeps really reinventing what started out as a very simple Mario game on the NES. I mean, they keep reinventing it over and over and over, and it seems to work pretty much every single time. And this time, I think a lot of people are making this callback to like Mario 64 with this game, and that's because it looks like a new game, essentially, because of the mechanic with the hat taking over creatures in the world, something we've never been able to do. And really the possibilities here are endless, right? I mean, you could take over all kinds of creatures and probably complete all types of puzzles. I mean, a lot of people freaked out about something like, say, I don't know, the T-Rex. I thought it was really cool to see Bullet Bill get taken over, and then you're flying around with him. How many puzzles do you think they'll have there? Maybe they actually do the Superman 64 ring flying part actually correctly. But I'm excited to play it. And what's great is October 27th? Really? Wow, that's soon. I was expecting end of November, early December. It's great that it's very soon. It's not that far off, and I'm ready to play it. So that would have been my game of the year, or game of E3 as well. Some other places pick things like Spider-Man. Sure, I get that, but at this point, Spider-Man might just be at next year's E3. Same with Anthem, that's definitely going to be at next year's E3. We know Mario is coming out this year in a few months, so yes, that would have been my pick as well. Mario Odyssey as Game of E3. Real quick, sticking with Mario Odyssey just for a minute, they did show off the co-op mechanic in like the treehouse, and it was interesting. So what you do is you split the Joy-Cons, boom. One person controls the hat, or Cappy as they call him, and the other person controls Mario. So what you do is the hat can pretty much be launched, and the person on one side controls the cap, has them race around, makes certain puzzles easier. They demonstrated how there was like a music note collecting quest or just a task they had to complete, and it was much easier with the second player controlling the cap, kind of flying around, much easier that way than having Mario try to jump around and grab them. And Mario still had to collect the moon, so you can't use the hat, for example, to collect a moon that's like way out of the way. It doesn't work that way. You have to at least jump and kind of climb Mario over to it to get it. And this is an interesting mechanic. I like the inclusion of co-op because it looks like the Switch, no matter what game is on there, they are going to try to include co-op, which I love. That is my favorite thing about this system, is they are dead set on letting you and someone else play a game that, I mean, let's face it, Mario, when we first saw this game, we couldn't figure out a way for them to include co-op. That is a cool mechanic. It's almost like how in Sonic back in the day, they would let you play as Tails, for example, even though he couldn't really do much off screen. To me, this kind of reminds me of that, you know, where you would have a friend play as Tails, jump around, help you out occasionally, but he's not the main focus, right? Mario's main focus, the Cap will kind of fly around on his own, even has a little bubble where he is, and he comes back. It gives you something to do if somebody else comes over and wants to play. It's the only thing that was kind of weird was that you have to hold down the X button to move the camera, it looked like. And I was trying to figure out how they would do that because you lose a joystick then that usually controls the camera. That's how you do it. Apparently you hold a button down and that lets you rotate the camera around. You know, that's going to be awkward. I assume you get used to it. But again, you're not going to sit at home by yourself and do that. It's just when someone comes over. So you can live with it then. And again, when these heads of the companies get kind of cornered into interviews, they will always get questions asked to them that sometimes the interviewer probably doesn't even expect them to answer, except for with nothing to announce now, or just kind of a deflect. And it looks like they caught Phil Spencer and asked him about Scalebound. What happened to this game? It looks so promising. People were excited. And Phil Spencer kind of had probably not the best answer to this thing. Basically, he said this was in an interview, translated, DualShockers talked about it, and then everyone else picked it up. Essentially, it comes down to Phil Spencer saying the game was announced too early, and then mounting pressure from excitement is what killed it. And really, that's not a good reason, I guess. I can pretty much tell you myself why Scalebound was canceled without Phil Spencer telling us anything. Scalebound was canceled because there's no market for that game on the Xbox. That's just plain and simple why they canceled it. It was going to take them a while longer to do it. It was going to be more money. And a game like Scalebound is kind of catered to a more of a Japanese RPG style crowd, right? It was definitely heavily influenced by Eastern culture. When you look at it, the art style was like that. It was definitely geared more towards that crowd. And of course, people in the US and other parts of the world like it as well. But, I mean, let's face it here, guys. The Xbox crowd, majority, not all of the Xbox crowd, are into shooters, racing games, action games, right? That's what it is. That's why, or sports games. That's why the term, like, Xbox Bro or whatever people say, has come about, because that's just the audience. They were going to put tons of money in Scalebound, and they probably weren't expecting a big return. They take one look at it and say, this isn't going to work out, and they cancel it. A lot of people weren't happy. But that is his best deflection that I can see here, is him saying the hype was too much. It was never going to live up to it. That's a bad excuse. That's like giving up, essentially. I mean, we get Metroid launched, or at least announced here, and the hype is overwhelming. But Nintendo's not backing down from it. It's almost like Microsoft just, in his words, backed down from the challenge of creating an awesome, strong, very good game that could lead to a string of sequels if they did it right. That's not the reason, guys. There's no market for that game on the Xbox One. If they wanted to serve gamers well, honestly, finish it, put it on the PC and see what happens alongside the Xbox One, or just sell the IP off and let somebody who has a Japanese-based market make it. Let Nintendo or let Sony build it. Sony could actually do a really good job with a game like that. Guys, our next bit of news is it's frustrating because I know this is going to disappoint and annoy a ton of people here. So what happened was Ubisoft Spain, for some reason, announced that the Switch version of Beyond Good and Evil 2 is real, and they did it in a tweet that roughly translates to "and Nintendo Switch" alongside of the other consoles, in an article all about Beyond Good and Evil 2. So here's the problem here. This is a social media group of Ubisoft that maybe does not always get the memos. We've seen this before in the past, where they hype something up that's not even real. And the big problem here is now a lot of people are probably under the assumption that it is coming to the Switch. And let's say it gets announced and it's not coming to the Switch. People are going to be really, really mad at something that was never true in the first place. Now, I'm not saying it's not possible for this to be true, and yes, it's coming to the Switch. I'm just saying social media groups of companies aren't always attached to like the engineering or developers or anything. Sometimes they honestly get stuff from other companies and other Facebook groups and stuff and post them. In this case, it sounds like they did a write-up. I don't think anyone knows what platform it's going to yet. So they just listed all of them. What they should have done is list none of them. That's what they should have done. So I don't know why this is the case, but you can look at this and say, cool, maybe it's coming to the Switch. I would not start carving it in stone anywhere until we hear something from the head of the company or Ubisoft themselves on a big stage talking about it. And that's it for Newswave today, guys. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let me know what you think about anything we talked about today, whether it is the Xbox One X checkerboarding games, much like the PS4 Pro is, that seems completely off about what their initial marketing was to be, hey, true 4K, no compromises. Oh, it's going to upscale stuff, so that's the way it is. We'll take that extra 100. Let me know what you think about Mario Odyssey and it being game of E3. Most places are saying that. Not all, most of them though. I think it was the game of the show though. Yeah, definitely. Let me know what you guys think about this voice chat app after Reggie kind of talked about it a little further, and definitely ingrained. You're going to need a smartphone. If you got to go sign up for a plan to get a new phone, you might want to do that now. I would get either Android or iPhone, obviously. Don't get a Windows phone. You're not going to be talking on the Switch with a Windows phone. That's it for now, guys. I will see you next time.